it, Jasmine. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited to see you all again. I know it's been a while, so I hope all of your other courses have been educative and sort of like bringing together everything about your business. And, you know, I know everything raises a lot of questions, but questions are a good thing, I think, and sort of make you think about where your business should go. So, so this slide is interesting. I loved this language here because I really have seen a difference in the pre-pandemic and post-pandemic world in regards to customer experience. And I really think that the pandemic sort of really brought people closer to the idea of like local businesses and a local experience. And I think what that did is it really increased the ability of local brands to sort of start businesses and do well in business, but it also brought evident the fact that human experience and interaction is the most important thing with your brand, right? Like your customers want your product, but they also care about how they feel around your product and around your brand and around maybe not you personally, but sort of what you put out with your team and your product and your energy. So just kind of want to say that as we start talking about the customer experience, that I do think that it has changed a lot in the last few years. And I do think that it's something that we have to focus on even more than we did a few years ago. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay. So the customer experience is, like it says here, it refers to customers as a holistic perception of how they experience your business. So basically that means your customer experience is every experience that your customer has with your brand or your product. Now that is extremely expansive because it is actually, customer experience is expansive. So it goes all the way from when they're first introduced to your brand on Instagram, in person, word of mouth, when they start looking you up, when they actually have the experience of buying your product or interacting with you to purchase the product, the post-product experience, it's everything. So, you know, it's about how people feel. It's about how people, about how people feel, and then sort of what leads them to buy your product. So a lot of people, like even before they buy your product, or your service, they've already had an experience with your business, right? Then they have another experience after they buy your product. But every one of those little things is a customer experience that sort of makes up this whole interaction with your brand. And so like this quote down here, the survey, 74% of people would buy something based on the customer experience alone. It's so true. I mean, so much of why someone even comes to you to buy your product is based on their experience with your brand and how it makes them feel before they even come to the product or to you or to the service. Okay, next slide. Okay, so why is customer experience important? Obviously, all of us have customer facing businesses. So there's different kinds of businesses. There are business to business, B2B businesses, and those are like businesses that sell to other businesses. Those also involve customer experience because another business buying your product is also your customer, right? But business to customer businesses, which is when you sell directly to consumers, the customer experience is even more important because when a business buys from you, it's usually because they're either reselling or they're using your product in something that they're making. When a customer comes to you, they are coming for consumption themselves. So the experience is even more important. So notable benefits are brand awareness, loyalty, satisfaction, sales and revenue, word of mouth marketing, and recommendations. So one of the things I want to highlight here is that we have found in our business that 50% of our customers are repeat customers. And a lot of times in the food business, that is the truth. And even for services related to food, is that repeat customers can really make up your entire business. They can make or break your business, right? And so bringing those customers back and keeping them loyal to you is so important to having a successful business. The brand awareness. So, brand awareness is like, okay, you go out there and you see the Target symbol, right? You know what that symbol means even before you see the word Target. Partially it's because they're so big, but partially it's because of the way that they have made customers feel about their brand. And it's almost a psychological thing. It's not something that people are aware of, but seeing your brand and awareness of it becomes like gets etched in your psyche in a way that makes you relate to it and makes you want to go there and purchase something. Customer satisfaction. So that's really like the part of the customer experience that's customer service, right? It's like very, very related to customer service. They're like, they are satisfied not only with your product, but with their interaction with you. They're satisfied with how the product makes them feel or the service makes them feel. And so when you have a happy customer, these are all things that increase. And so in some ways, the customer experience is not only important for actual sales, it's important for marketing, right? Because people hear about your brand from their friends or other people that interact with it, or they hear about it on the internet. I mean, that's something that they hear about it on Instagram. Those are all things that make people purchase or not purchase your product or service. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is something that was very hard for me to understand when I first started my business, is that there is a difference between customer service and customer experience. So customer experience is like so first of all, customer service is a part of customer experience. It's a subset of customer experience. But customer experience is much larger, right? It's about how it makes you feel. It's about, do you want to go back? Was it nostalgic? Does it make you think of something that you want to do again? Customer service is like, how was your experience in the purchase of that product? Like it's a localized experience, right? And even if you don't have a brick and mortar, there is customer experience, right? So like if somebody just buys on your website, like how was that experience of them buying on your website? Was it easy? Was your website easy to navigate? Could you quickly buy something? Could you ask questions? If you asked questions, did you get responses? Or it may be a brick and mortar or a farmer's market or something where there's actually a physical person there greeting someone. Now, we'll talk a lot about customer service in the building and managing your teams webinar next week, because that is a big part of building and managing your teams. But just right now, think of customer service as just one part of customer experience. And I want to stop here and just mention, if you guys have any questions as we're going through the slides, feel free to speak up. I know you all are in different stages of the process, meaning some of you already have a product that you're selling and some of you are still in the inception stages. And so your questions may differ wildly. So just feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. Okay, next slide. Okay. So these are some steps that you can take to create and understand your customer experience. So the first one is to understand your customers. And so that is something that you definitely want to think about at the beginning stages of your business. So for example, like, do you ask yourself, who is going to buy my product? Like, what is my goal population for my product? Is there an age group? Is there a type of person? Is there an income level? These are all things that you think about when you're trying to figure out who your customer is going to be. Because if you can't understand who your customer is, or you don't know who your customer is, then it's really hard to make sure that the experience works for them, because there are different experiences that work differently for different types of customers and different types of products. So there's different ways to understand your customers. One could be, you've already started selling your product and you kind of know who buys it or your service. The second could be, you can look at market data and market research about the types of people that tend to buy certain types of products. And I can send out, I will send out after this webinar, a website that kind of can help you understand that has done market research and kind of pulls it all. And then you can kind of plug in your product and understand what kind of person would buy it. You can ask your customers questions, right? You can, talk to your customers when they come in and buy it. Why do you like this product? Or try to understand something about their lives to understand why they are buying the product. You can do surveys. This is something that we started doing. And it can just be like, somebody can jot something down. It can be an email survey. A lot of times that you can keep track of who's buying your product through email now. For example, if you have a Square point of sale, then it will track email addresses and you'll be able to figure out who's coming back, and you'll be able to send out surveys to them and things like that. If they agree to it, you have to get consent for that, which you can do when they're purchasing your product. So yeah, engage your customers, talk to them, figure out, who they are and what they are. And the reason, and that leads to the second one, which is engage your customers. So this is different than understanding, because this is engaging your customers is when they come in to buy your product, or when they go to the website to buy your product, or when they ask questions about the product. How engaging are you with those customers? Like you're creating a story and an experience with them. That is your goal, right? And so if you have a brick and mortar and somebody comes in, is it just a very transactional experience where it's like, I'll take that, purchase, buy? Or is there something more like, maybe your team asks questions of them. Maybe you train your team to engage with them a little bit. Maybe when they walk into the brick and mortar, there's an experience for them to have inside of the space, aside from just purchasing the product. And it can just be an aesthetic experience. It doesn't have to be something that they are actively engaging in. It can be, what do they feel when they walk into the space? If you have a website-based business, what do they feel like when they go onto your website? What's that experience like? So you just finding ways to engage them in a way that makes them think, oh, that was different. That was different, and I want to go back because that was different, and I like the way it made me feel. We learned a lot in the coffee business that people really go back to coffee shops based on how they feel when they're in them. It has to do with the coffee itself. I mean, the coffee has to be good. The pricing has to work, but it's really, how do I feel when I'm in here? Because I'm going to come in here like 3 times a week or 4 times a week. Some people every day, right? I'm going to be in here a lot. So how do I feel when I'm in here? The third one, train your team regularly. So we'll talk about this in the next webinar as well, but it's important to understand you cannot just train your team once and expect that they can constantly create like the experience that you want to give to your customers, because you know what experience you want to give to them, and that may be constantly changing and constantly evolving. And also it's not always natural for people. So training them regularly, like having regular meetings once a week where you're sort of talking about the customer experience, right? Talking about issues that may have come up, asking them questions, right? Because they're going to interact with your customers, maybe in a different way or more than you will. So learning from them, like what is working and what is not working, what have they heard, what are people saying, can really be like a mutually beneficial experience for you and your team. Understanding the experience on a personal level. So, where people decide to spend their money. Well, first of all, let's back up. We all know that like there are so many different options for where people spend their money. And so especially in something like the food business, like there are endless options for where people spend their money. So, understanding how they are feeling towards your food, like how they spend their money on food, is a very personal decision for most people. And so, you have to really go in there and really care about understanding, like, why do they like your product, and why do people like your product, and what do they not like about it, and use that information to better the experience for everyone and be open to it, right? Because sometimes you can go in and say, well, this is my product, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. And of course, there are always going to be people that don't like it, but be open to feedback, because maybe that feedback will help you better your product or your service, and increase your brand awareness. And sometimes the not so good feedback is just as beneficial, even though it doesn't feel as good as the good feedback, because it can really help you better things. And you really have to be in a constant state of, I'm looking to make this experience great, and I'm going to be constantly looking for ways to better the experience for my customers. The consistency throughout your brand. So that's the idea that a customer they know they're going to get what they expect in all aspects of experiences with your brand and your product or service. And that goes from like a website experience to an in-person experience, to then coming to you and saying, hey, this didn't work. Like, I need, like, fix this, like something wrong with the product or something wrong with an interaction that happened. You want to send out the same messaging throughout all of those experiences. And so that you create the consistency of their customer experience from beginning to end. And, all the steps in between. Are there any questions about that? I know that's a lot of information. Or anything that someone has experienced with their customers that sort of lends itself to this, that they want to share with the team. Okay. Can move to the next one. Okay. So, understand your customers. These are some questions that you can ask yourself. What experience is your ideal customer looking to have? What elements can you bring into your space that optimize that experience? Decor, music, staff presentation, flavors in your food beverage program, plating, etc. And what inspires your ideal client to make a purchase decision? So, as you're going to sort of jot down, and I would, after this presentation, we have a worksheet, and I would love for everyone before our next meeting to sort of just jot down some notes here, because I think it can be really eye-opening. And it's also not something people think about all the time, even though they think about, like, for example, if you have a product, you're like, I have a vegan product, right? So my ideal customer is vegan. But that's a very large term. Like, there are so many vegans. Like, who is this person that's buying your product, right? So who is it? And they're not just vegan, right? What else about them do you need to know to make your experience the best? And then what experience do you want them to have when they walk into your place, or when they visit your website? And if it's not a brick and mortar, your website is really important, but it's also an experience, and it can make or break someone buying your product. So just jot down some notes here after the presentation, and we'll share them in the next meeting. Okay, you can turn the slide. Okay, engaging your customers. So just getting that feedback, like I said, is so important. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's some options here: newsletter surveys, Instagram polls, 3-question surveys at the end of dinner included with their tab. That's something that you've probably seen in restaurants. We have found that, to be honest, like, the quicker feedback options tend to work the best, just because, like, we've seen a big change in the last couple of years between people who respond to newsletter surveys and people who respond to Instagram polls, because people like it. I just making the experience very quick and easy for customers, I think, is really important. You don't want to send somebody to a survey that opens up and it's like 25 questions, right? Like, no, people just don't want to do that. And so we just think about making it engaging enough that they're like, okay, I'm going to click on this and it's going to be really easy for me to do. I can do it in just a few minutes. If it's an automated poll, if it's like a survey or, something where they have to click on to give you their insight. If it's something where you're talking one-on-one, I think that could be a much more organic experience, and sort of like talk to your customers, right? You know, and I know we're all in the business of sales, and you're like, it takes time to do that. And it's not always natural to like talk to every single one of your customers. But honestly, I have found that doing that, talking to your customers, even not about the product, about their lives, right? Just getting to know them has been the best way to get people to become repeat customers in your business. Like, because people want that human experience, they want the human interaction. And so, you know, and you can do that on a website too. Like, you can create a more personalized website that feels less transactional than others. I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something about the engaging our customers, and I can't. Okay, well, maybe it'll come to me. Okay. I felt like it was a good thing to say. Okay, it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But yeah, so just really like making them feel like they're a part of your product. Like, people do feel that way. They're like, this is the product I use, and I'm tied to it now, and I'm tied to the people that make it. And especially when you have a smaller business, like it's a lot easier to do that when you're a smaller business. As you expand, it gets harder and harder, but like, this is the opportunity to do it and to really create that that relationship between your customers, where they can come back to you and then they can be a little more honest with you about things. You know, people tend to be more honest in relationships where they feel more comfortable, where they have history of a longer relationship. So I think it really opens up an opportunity for positive feedback and negative feedback, which can turn into something positive. One thing I also want to mention is that one thing that we have done in the past, like when we bring out a new product, is we've done actually like customer tastings, or not really focus groups, but sort of, where we get like people together, we sample a product for like 2 days. And it does two things. It gives your customer an ability to give you the feedback and for you to really understand how they feel about the product, but it also makes them feel like they're a part of something. Like, you're taking their opinion into account when you're thinking about launching this new type of smoothie in your business or whatever. Like, it's a good way of keeping them engaged in addition to getting information about, like, should I launch this product or not? Okay, next slide. Okay, so training your team regularly. So it took me a while to learn that customer service is not actually natural for everyone, right? So there are so many different types of personalities in this world, and your team will be made up of many types of personalities. And I think that's beneficial, having people with different kinds of strengths. Some people are like much more introverted, and they're just like, you know, they're doing their job great, but they're like not going to go out and have a conversation with all of the customers, right? It's more uncomfortable for them to do that. Some people are very outgoing, and like, it's very easy for them to do that. So training your team on it is really important, so everybody has the same knowledge and kind of script of what to do. It also helps when people have questions, when customers have questions. You know, your team sort of knows how to answer certain questions. They know if a customer, like if you train your team to say, if a big customer has a problem with something, like, let me talk to management, I'll get right on that. You know, then you will have that consistent response every time. If you don't train them, you may have different responses from different staff members or different people on your team, depending on who they are. And it's not always a response you expect. So it's important to, like, role playing, you know, create a system and then practice it with your team. What do you do if the customer has a problem? If you are a restaurant, what do you do if the customer is bringing the food back saying it's not good? If you sell a service or you sell a service, like, what are you going to do if the customer comes back to you and they say they don't like the product, but it's already used? What is your system there, so that you can train your team to deal with that? And the other thing about training your team is that if you do it, then the language will come from you. Like, you will set the standard of what the language, what the interaction should be, what the experience should be. If you don't train your team, people will create their own ways to solve problems, right? And that's fine. That's just what people do. But if you set everybody up with the same knowledge, then there will be a consistent problem solving atmosphere in your business. So providing scripts can be a great thing. Modeling expectations for your team, they're going to watch you and what you do. And so if you model it regularly and consistently, like they will catch on to it, and it'll help them sort of give that same sort of experience to customers. Understand. Yes. Okay. Oh, no, you're fine. You can go to the next one. Thank you. So this is an interesting one, because this is really like, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. If you walked into your own restaurant, like as a customer, what were your expectations? What is your experience like? Because that can really inform figuring out how to make your experience better or changing it. I mean, it's a little bit hard to do because you're so immersed in your product, right? You're like living your product or your service. But we would even do some things sometimes where we would like walk into our cafe from the outside, which we never did, right? Because we'd come in through the back, like everyone that works there comes in through the back. We'd go in through the front of the cafe, kind of like walk up, and like it really opens your eyes because you see things that you maybe don't see from the back. And so I think doing that often, sort of like stepping back to look at it from the customer's eyes in whatever way you can really help you see things that you won't see when you're what's called, in the back of the house. So you can also do this with your staff, right? That you can make them customers so they understand, look, this is what customers are seeing when they walk into our space, and this is what they're feeling when they walk into our space. And that can really help people understand like how to make that whole experience better. If you don't have a brick and mortar and you have like a website based business, I mean, maybe it's going onto the website and playing around on it. Like you're going to buy something. You probably were, if you have a website, you were probably involved in the design of it. So you were very back of the house, like putting it together, but actually going onto it. And I've done this on ours, going onto it and try to like navigate it and realizing, oh, this is not very user friendly, or like, this is not intuitive. This is confusing, can really help you make the experience better for your customers. Okay, next slide. Okay. Yes, so consistency, always with your brand as much as you can. I mean, all of the previous slides sort of lend itself to this also, like training your team, that's about consistency, and engaging your customers, it's about consistency. So there's so many ways that like I said at the beginning, that customers interact with your brand these days: website, social media, apps, emails, like your brand verbiage, which is like what it says, literally what it says, and then what it says to people when they interact with it. Merchandise, flavors, vendors, like, so the reason the consistency is so important is because you never know which one of like the 10 ways a customer can interact with your brand they will interact with first and second and third, right? So for one customer, their first interaction may be like actually at a brick and mortar restaurant or service that you have, right? The next customer, their first interaction may be, oh, I randomly stumbled on you online. So they're just looking at you online. The next customer may hear about you from a friend. And so having the consistency, is a way to make sure that no matter what interaction a customer has, first or second or third, it's going to be consistent. And so and then also what that does is it tells customers, no matter what interaction I have, I'm going to get the same experience. It is something that doesn't happen like right away at the beginning. Like it is a little bit of a process. So don't feel like, oh my God, I have to have all of these 10 or 15 things like completely consistent at the beginning. I mean, sometimes businesses grow where they have maybe just the Instagram and a brick and mortar, and then they create a website, and then, then they have merch and it grows from there. So it does become an organic process. So the best thing to do is whatever you start with, just start with the consistency there. And then as you expand out to different points of interaction for your customer, you just keep that same consistency and that same experience for them. And, when you get the customer feedback and it makes you feel like you need to change something about the customer experience, just think about like, okay, what, there's a lot of touching points here. What all do I need to change so that experience stays consistent? For example, I know I don't remember who it was. I know a couple people were talking about changing their logo, so that, it better, like, just to better represent who they are. And so, you just want to make sure when you change your logo, you're kind of changing it consistently. Like, where is my logo? Where all is my logo, right? And that's one reason I say it's a little bit easier to change at the inception changes, because once you do merch and things like that, you have to change a lot more things. Brands do it all the time, even big brands. Like, I think, Coca-Cola changes their logo. Like, they've changed their logo a couple times, and brands do change things across the board. So it's not like you can't do it. It's just making sure that you realize I may have to change it on all these different touching points that my customers have with me. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Okay, go to the next page. Okay. Do we have any questions right now? Maybelline, do you mind pulling up the document for the next meeting on Thursday? I just want to go through a couple of things I think will help us sort of set the stage for Thursday, a couple of things that we can do in advance. Okay, so I love this because, like I said, I think it's really important to think about these questions. So what I'm really hoping for Thursday, and don't feel like you have to spend like a ton of time on it, like spend like 10-15 minutes, just like what comes to your head. I would love for us to be able to share in the group, because I think thinking about these things is not actually very natural. It's not like creating a logo where you're like, oh, I have all these great ideas and I want to do this and this, because these, for me anyways, it really made me think, like, I don't know, was my answer to so many questions like this when I first started thinking about them. So if everyone can just like jot down a few things, and if you don't know, that's okay. You can, and that's an important thing to know. Like, I don't know who my ideal client is. I have no idea. That's something really important for you to know. And then we can work with that and sort of help talk it out. And I would love to do that in the next session to help people sort of figure that out if they don't know it already. So I know y'all are busy, but just spend a little bit of time jotting down some ideas before Thursday. I think one of the things about this topic, which is unlike some of the other topics, is that it's like not intuitive. So you have to think about, I don't know, what questions do I have about it because I haven't thought about it before. So I think that filling this out will help us have a really great experience for the next meeting. But that was actually a lot shorter than I thought it would be. So I'm very happy to take questions, to talk about any aspect of this. Right now, if somebody has already thought about this a little bit with their brand, like maybe they want to share it with the group.
I kind of wanted to ask you, Tina, like, I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but just some of the ways that, like, who is your ideal customer? And then also, how did you create a customer experience, and like, what are those elements for you?
Yeah. So our ideal customer, we realized after we actually did this through metrics because we started looking at who was buying our products, and we realized like a lot of our customers were actually like women. Like that's one thing we realized. Like we thought it would be sort of like equal, but it was actually primarily women. It was primarily people between the ages of like 20 and 45. And so, and it was primarily like, and I mean, income level didn't really seem to matter in our business. It seemed to be like people all with all different backgrounds and abilities. But so what we did with that information is that we really changed the color scheme of our logo. So for example, the Hot and Cool had a totally different logo back in the day, and it was red and blue, which I always hated because it reminded me of Domino's. But I didn't make that decision. And, you know, so when we realized this, like we changed the logo to make it a lot softer, like we wanted more bright colors, like, and that was partially because I just wanted that. Like I didn't like the other logo, and I wanted something that was more just like softer and feminine. And so, but when we got that information, I was like, look, we should do this because this is actually who buys our product. We changed our logo, we changed the colors, we made the space a lot brighter. That was because we realized, okay, so our ideal customer, or who our customers are, like they're mostly local. They're coming from Leimert Park. They're coming, and like we felt like people in our area loved color. Like they wanted to come in and feel like they were in a coffee shop, and it was like a beautiful experience to be there. So like we painted the floor, like we had an artist do a bunch of stuff on the floor, and we brought plants in, and we painted the walls to have a much more like brighter, beautiful space, because we realized like people are sitting here drinking their coffee, and like, you know, South LA is not like beautified on the outside like other parts of LA. Like it is not, like the money just hasn't been there to beautify it on the outside in the same way. So we were like, well, we'll beautify the space inside and give customers that experience that we want and get them to come back. And so those are like some of the changes that we would make. Like, and then, you know, as far as customer service, that took us a long time to understand, like really understand the training of your staff and how you have to train people to really be your brand, right? Like, what is your brand? Like, what are you trying to convey with it? Like we were trying to convey like, a feeling of health, a feeling of community, a feeling of just feeling good about yourself in this space, and not feeling like you need to be anything but what you are, and like a sense of ease. That was what we really wanted to create in our customers. And so we like encourage our staff to have conversations with customers, like to get to know them, to, you know, like when they're there, and if there's nobody, they don't have any customers and other customers, go ask everything's okay. Go talk to your customers that are sitting at the tables in the space. So those are sort of some of the things that we did to use the information that we had, and then transform like the experience of the customers.
Yeah, like what you were saying earlier about how people go to cafes for like the way they make them feel. Like that's for me 100%. Like I don't know if you even know there's like ambiance sounds like on YouTube for just like cafe sounds. And I really enjoy those things. So like a cafe doesn't necessarily have to have like um the best coffee or the best tea or anything, because I don't even really drink it that much, but really I go for like an experience and like a setting that makes me feel like calm or at ease, or like it's beautiful, and like so definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
But also I was gonna say lost my train of thought too.
Well, let me say
um
something about what you were just saying, so that
yeah.
and then hopefully you can remember it about the
Yeah.
experience. So, and so that's why it's really important to also know your product, right?
Mhm.
Like, what are you, because some people are selling products or services where the physical experience is less important, because like for our product, they're consuming our product in the space regularly, right? And so the space is was one of the most important parts of the customer experience, right? For some people, like you're selling something where the experience is mostly at home, like you buy the product and then the experience is at home. So just thinking about like the different places your customer experiences the product or service, and how you can make sure all of those, like I said, all of the touching points are consistent and working. That did not help you remember what you were
I
thinking.
didn't remember, but it's totally fine because this is good conversation anyway. But I always think about, because like sometimes I feel like customer experience and branding go very hand in hand, because it's like you're setting a tone for what you're for you're setting, the branding sets a tone of what the experience that people are going to have. So I'm always kind of like, I really enjoy that aspect because like a product can go way further than just the actual product. Like it could create a whole like universe around it. Um, and those are, I really enjoy like when brands do different events, like with their product featured, but it's like that's not the only thing that you're getting out of it. Like for example, like my product is just like condiments. Yeah, they're just like condiments, but I feel like I can create different scenarios for people to enjoy those condiments. So like showing people how they can use it, but also showing people how they can like set up a dinner around this product, or even having a dinner party around this product, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and so like for you, like engaging your customer, like there are, like what you said, like a lot of ways to do it. You could go on Instagram and do like an Instagram story about using it. You could create videos, or you can send emails about like, here's some recipes to use, and just keep your customers like super interactive with you, even if they're not like going into your space once a week and buying your product, which likely for spices, it's going to be less, right? And so how do you keep that experience going so that the next time they run out of your spice, they're like, oh, I know, well, obviously I'm going to get that spice again. You have any other questions? I'm going to check the chat. Just see.
I would like to make a comment. Piggyback a little bit of what you were saying, how a bad experience can actually give you like a lot of good feedback, even though it doesn't feel good. So I've worked in hospitality for a long time, and I have different opportunities to see that hand to hand. I remember one specific occasion in which I was producing an event in Times Square for New Year's Eve, and it was this amount of people that was insane. So I was not directly involved in the sales of the tickets for the event. The person that sold the ticket told this particular, it was a family coming up, flew from I don't remember from where, to New York to have the, like, you know, the big bowl experience. So they were had expectations, and they were, when you as a customer buy something, you are not only buying a product, as we've been saying, you're buying the whole experience. So the way the ticket, these particular tickets were sold to this family was completely different from what they're expecting and what they were told. When they got there, they were really upset because they had somebody that needed a special assistant. I didn't know that. Nobody told me. They were upset because they said they were told that they were going to receive this experience. So at that point, it's like, what do you do when you have this? You can either just say like, listen, it is not my fault, like whatever, whatever, or you can just figure out something. I had space for me to give them the best experience ever. I work it out. I remember I sent them a bottle of Prosecco. I put them in a really nice area. Like I upgrade them. I treated them like this never happened. And it turned out that that was one of the best experiences that they ever had. It was one of the best, how can I say, reviews that we got from that event. So it does just show, like, just because a customer is experiencing something bad with you, doesn't mean like, oh, you stop there. That is actually the best opportunity that as a brand you have to overcome that, to learn from your customer. And also another thing is, you can be creating an experience, and as Tina says, like, okay, you have to back up to see how it looks like from the customer point of view. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind, from my perspective, like the way Tina sees something is not going to be the same way as Jasmine sees something. So you also stepping back, and as Tina mentioned it, asking your staff to get out of the store and come in and see, like, how does it feel when you walk into the store? Can you see like the little details? Is there garbage on the floor? Are the windows clean? Like those kind of things, even though you take for granted, the little details are adding value to your experience, the experience that your customers is perceiving. And one customer perceive one thing, but then the other sees another thing. So it's like a whole kind of like seeing it in a like kind of like a 360 kind of thing, and putting into everyone's shoes. Kind of. I don't know if that helps or made it worse.
No, I love that. And I love the idea of using a bad customer experience to actually create a link with that customer that turns into something lifelong. That has actually happened to us quite a bit because, you know, in the food business, when things get busy, the customer experience can get shaky just because that's how restaurants are. We've all been in restaurants, they're super busy. Everybody wants what they want. And you have to be able to give that experience, and it doesn't always work. But sometimes going out and saying, I'm so sorry, we really messed that up. Like, please come in, like, here's a replacement and here's 50% off your food next time. Like, you know, when people have a good experience from a bad one, it actually creates like an even stronger link.
Yes.
And I would not encourage bad experiences, but it really can be a way to, and not with everyone. Some people are going to be like, no, like, I'm done. And that's okay. That happens. Like, you do lose customers, but you can use it as an opportunity to, and that's why the training is so important with your staff, right? Because you may not be there when this is happening, right? So what's happening when you're not there? And how can you make sure the staff is sending that same messaging? And that was something that we actually had to learn the hard way. Like that, you know, we had a couple experiences where our staff like did not react appropriately to something that happened. And you know, it kind of, you know, and then we realized like, okay, we have to make sure our staff knows what to do when something goes wrong. Because a lot of times staff training is focusing on just how to do things, right? Like, but it's not focused on, and here's what you do if this goes wrong, and if this goes wrong, and if this goes wrong, but really foreseeing that and training on it. And it gives staff confidence. It's very nerve-wracking when you're working for a company and something goes wrong and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to get in trouble, but I also don't, you know, you have to make your own decisions. So just empowering them to really think about, like, if your idea is like, I always held the idea, I know it's like it's been said for ages, but the customer is always right. They just are. Like, you have to proceed that way. And then sometimes you can't make them happy and you just have to say, I'm really sorry, and that's it. But when you're in a service business, and I think everybody here is in a service business in some way, right? Like, that is kind of just part of the deal, is from what I've seen. Anyone have any other comments or questions or in the worksheet before we meet again?
Has anyone had any experience with any brand that perhaps was negative or was positive that you can still remember and that you would like to share? Because those are also like good points of how to, yes, Stephanie, of how to understand what a good experience is. Like, oh, I went to this place and this happened, but they fix it this way, or so forward. Stephanie.
Yes, hi, please excuse me. I'm keeping my video off because I'm sick. So every second I'm tending myself, you don't want to see that. But this is amazing, this conversation, because I love doing the work that makes me kind of visualize the experience for the customer, because I feel like it helps me not miss certain details, like in planning, like, oh yeah, I don't know, but this is helping me for, vision what I want to do. But one of the experiences that I remember, similar to like a negative experience that kind of turned into a positive for me, was I went to a cafe and I was so excited to get like they have a beautiful like espresso machine and it's like super old fashioned and all that. And when I arrived, I had driven like 30 minutes to get there too. And when I arrived, the machine was being serviced. Like there was an issue with it. So they only had like drip coffee. And I was like, oh man. But they gave me a little branded coin card that said like, come back, free coffee, we love you. And it was so cute. And I thought to myself, that is so smart, because it's also like a branding tool. And, you know, it's inviting me back into another experience. There's nothing they could do there. You know, they were very friendly, and they said, you could try this, you could do this. And it was fine, but that's memorable. I haven't used it yet. So every time I see it, I remember the moment and like what happened. But that was a cool way to keep that engagement, or make something positive out of a negative. And also, I love everything everybody shared. It's very helpful to me.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of thinking about like, why do you think about that? Why do you like go to your favorite restaurant every time, right? Is it, and maybe it's just the food. For some people, like it is just the food. But why do you buy like the products that you buy over and over and over again? And thinking about your own experience with other brands can kind of help you kind of like decipher, okay, it's this and this and this, because you know yourself. So if you can figure out why you like certain brands, you can try to figure out, okay, so what is my customer going to be? And what are they going to want to experience with my brand, with my product, or with my service? We had at Hot and Cool, we had a like leak in our roof a couple months ago, and we had to close the cafe. So we closed it. We put it on Instagram and we put a sign on the door, but you know, people still came to the cafe because not everyone's like checking Instagram and stuff. And we had a bunch of people message us on Instagram like, oh my gosh, you're closed. I can't believe you're closed. I drove out here. I drove out there. And like, we just went on and we just asked, like, gave everyone like 50% off their next visit. We give them a code because even though there's nothing anyone could do, like they were frustrated, and that, you know, psychologically impacts their like desire to come back, you know, even though it was unavoidable, like you get leaks, you know, people want security and consistency. They want to know when they are there that it's going to be there, that it's going to be open. And in their mind, it's not like, even though it was closed for a reason outside of anyone's control, like they giving them that coupon and saying, just come back and it's 50% off. Like, they're like, okay, that makes me feel better. And so right now at Hot and Cool, we have actually had to do some work on the cafe. And so it is closed, and we're actually renovating the inside to create like some new food and coffee concepts. And so we're actually like working internally on like, what's that messaging going to be like, right? Like, how are we going to communicate that consistently to our customers that we are going to be probably down for like a month, and this is what we're coming out with, and here's where you can find us in the meantime, and things like that. So you know, right now the customers are having an experience even though we're closed, because the experience is we're closed, right? And so they're like, okay, when are you coming back? And am I just going to move on, or am I going to understand what's happening, get the messaging, and then I'll be back in a month when you're open with your new products and your new services. So sometimes when there's something wrong with your business, not wrong, but something changing with your business, or there's a break in your business, or for whatever reason, like keeping that communication alive and keeping just remember that experience does not go away just because you're closed, or just because like you've had, you know, there is always an experience. And so just making sure the communication, and I found communication is so important with customers. Like, you cannot over communicate with customers. Like, give them as much information as you can, put it in, you know, electronically in your brick and mortar, like on your website, just give them all the information you can. Stephanie?
Oh, I think my
Your hand's still up.
up, but just the last thing I wanted to comment when you mentioned that it's important to, when you're training, also to train for, you know, worst case scenarios or when things go wrong. That felt so, like, gave me such a sense of relief as a business owner, because I think a lot of the worry is worry that's maybe unconscious. Like, you know, I can think about things that may go wrong and that I might not be prepared for without even realizing that's what's happening in the background. And it kind of causes hesitation, but actually thinking, like, iterating all of those things, like what ifs, and getting that off of my mind as a business owner would be amazing, because there's a preparation, there's something in place, for those worst case scenarios, and it's written down and everyone's aware of it. So that's a positive exercise. I like.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask something else. Sometimes also customers just want to be listened. Like you don't have even to do anything. It is just like they want to express how they felt about their experience, and by you just listening and apologizing and even having like an open question, what can I do for you? Sometimes they will say, no, I just wanted to let you know, and you don't have to do anything, but just like to listen. So, because as human, we also like to be acknowledged, as Tina said, like be communicative, but also like get like that space for them to express and give you that feedback, like creating that little space. I think is also important.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having the two-way communication.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have anything else to say? Any questions? See, I know Blanca and Belinda came in a little late. I don't know if you guys want to ask anything before. Hi, Blanca.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment what Maybelline was saying right now about just asking how customers are doing. I used to work at Nordstrom Rack last year, actually, and one of the things that made the experience for the shoppers, for our guests to come into the store, is just saying hi, good morning, or saying how your day is going. I feel like if we could all do something like that with our customers or with our guests coming for an experience, just to say hi or how's their day going, will make their experience even more memorable. And that's one of the reasons I saw regulars coming back, because they really liked that we made it very welcoming for them. And what I'm hearing about a lot is educating the staff. I wasn't really trained much, so that will be a big component for my business, to really train staff to know what to do, feel confident in any sort of situation, because there were a couple of times I wish I had been taught what to say, what not to say, and how to interact with a customer that wasn't having the best time at the store, and making sure I was able to service them, even though that they weren't able to get a nice experience. I was able to still service them and let them leave with a sense that they were more than welcome to come back, or who they could talk to, depending on the situation that was going on at the moment.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hi, Belinda.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I did hear the last part about, you were asking basically what's your customer experience, or why do you choose to go back to a certain space, restaurant or store? And definitely it's the customer service. Like I will bypass, I'll go out my way because I had a good experience with whatever that person that went beyond the scope of their definition of their job details, just to make me, I felt like I was the only person in the store, but that maybe just who that, that's just who that person was. So why do I go back to, repeat as a repeat customer, is definitely customer experience. Sometimes the food may not be that great, but I really love that person's attitude. I really love that, or, and then as far as what my ideal customer is, just that I want my customers to feel welcomed into my space. I want, this just the same experience that I have. I love the part where you all were saying about just changing the experience, because sometimes they may come in with some, burden on their shoulders. And I love that. I love that challenge. I love to change that atmosphere by just recognizing that, hey, someone's going through something, and like I said, just that simple hello, or just the way you approach them and ask those probing questions. And before I know it, they've left out and they're like, I'm really glad I came, so just having them open up. And then another thing I was going to say was, I'm finding that in this health space, that I'm often having to really, really, really explain what's the benefit of my product to people. So as I mentioned, I'm sharing a space, a kitchen space with, a hamburger, wings, and fries and all that good stuff, which we all love. But no one asks those questions about, well, what is this burger going to do other than fill me up in my belly? But for me, I'm always constantly having to like, well, what is that juice going to do? So explain those things and just not being offended or like not being on the defense about it, but being ready to explain that to them and giving them the education that I'm saying that I'm trying to promote. And then them feeling like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that. So I definitely, bring down those barriers that they may, come with, or the stigma of veganism, so anyway, that's just my little add in. Thank you.
Well, and Belinda, I would say I love that, because actually that's a very like honest approach to the health space. And sort of, so for you, like really thinking about like your ideal customer, or your customer is somebody who is interested in wellness. But people that are interested in wellness have a lot of questions about wellness. Even people that know stuff about wellness have questions about wellness, right? And so if you just go in understanding that, like maybe it's not your ideal customer. Maybe your ideal customer already knows about wellness, but your customer, that expands your customer base to people who are either thinking about their wellness in a different way or are already there. And how will that experience be for both of them, right? And so people that are already know a lot about wellness, they may have less questions, and you don't have to answer the questions. The people that don't will have a lot of questions, but how can you also approach that? Like, can you put information in your space? Can you put like information up that people can read when they're in your space, even though it's shared? So when they're coming in there, they're saying, oh, okay, I see the benefits of this juice and the benefits of this. Oh, look, here's like a little pamphlet on the, with all the juices, and, so how can you make the experience great for your customers and for yourself, so that it can be mutual and that those customers can come back, and then they'll become those customers who already know about wellness. And right. And then, so just thinking about that also, like maybe you have two different kinds of customers, and how can you make the experience great for both of those types of people?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for just what you just said, reminding me to be, because there isn't a lot of material that I do have posted up, because also sharing the space, I kind of like, although, the owners have said like, hey, this is your space, do whatever you want, I still kind of feel like it's not really mine. So I've kind of hidden myself, but I do need to make a better presence, like you said, with just that, as people are waiting for their burger, they can pick up this pamphlet and like, oh, I didn't know that, so.
Yeah. And it's also a great marketing tool for yourself. Like maybe they're not there for your business, right? But they pick it up and then they're like, oh, maybe I'll try that. I'll get my burger with a wellness juice. So, and I don't know, Blanca and Melinda, if you were here when I was just asking the team on the worksheet to just spend like as much time as you have. I know everyone's busy, so spend like 10 to 15 minutes just kind of jotting down answers to those questions, because in the next meeting on Thursday, I would love for the group to share some of the things about the customer experience, so that we can sort of work towards, I mean, I can help you all individually based on what your answers are, and then we can all help each other with those responses. Everyone has the worksheet, right? I think it must have been, you all have the worksheet. Okay, great. Is there anything else anyone wants to share or discuss?
I had a question, Tina.
Yeah.
Because my product is a bit, I guess, in my opinion, like experimental, I have an idea of who I'd like to target, and I know I might be my target customer, but I also want to see who may gravitate towards the product and kind of test it. So I was wondering if there are any like techniques that maybe you wish you would have tried to kind of test to see who your target market is, aside from like surveys. Like, is there something that you would have done, like that you wish to get more information?
So remind me of what your product is again.
It's a flower essence infused beverage, like an elixir.
Okay. So I would actually do like with friends and family, I would do like mini focus groups and tastings. And, you know, if you don't already have like a space or a customer base, you can just do it with people around you. And I would gain insight that way about, and, you know, especially helps if you have a varied amount of people who are trying it. And get feedback from them individually. And that will sort of help form, okay, who's liking this, who's not liking this, who would drink this. And so when somebody tries it, you can ask them up some follow-up questions. For example, you know, what do you think about how do you think about the taste? Would you buy it regularly? Would you, you know, those kinds of things to see, like, is this somebody that would actually buy my product? Because they may all say they like it, but then when you go to the next question of like, would you buy it regularly? Maybe they like it, but they're not really that interested in purchasing it all the time because it's not their type of beverage. So we did that a lot. We used like internal focus groups. We did weird things. Like I think we went to Whole Foods at one point and just asked random people. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would suggest that, but we were really trying to get out there about like who would like our product, who would buy our product. And so, but I think friends and family are like the best way to do it. And you can even drop off samples to people. So like, you don't have to like have an event where people have to come to it. You can say, hey, I'm going to drop off a drink. Like, I'd love your thoughts on it in the next week, and like drop off the drink to 25 people and see what sort of feedback you get.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Good.
I look forward to speaking to you all on Thursday. I think it is at 4.
Yes, it's Thursday at 4 p.m. Let me just confirm that. So we are not. Yes, Thursday at 4 p.m.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.